We're ready. We're prepared. Do not give in to fear. We are fearless.
Well, I don't want to get involved in something that Pamela is involved with. If you'd like to say something, Pam?
You're next. Get ready. It's over. It ends, and we're coming after you.
High-profile attorney Abbe Lowell is the lawyer representing New York Attorney General Letitia James. He sent a letter to Attorney General Pam Bondi arguing the Department of Justice should reject a request to prosecute James over allegations of mortgage fraud. He says the criminal referral against James is improper political retribution and lacks any credible foundation. In the letter, he said, quote, "The stunning hypocrisy of President Trump's complaint that the Justice Department had been politicized and weaponized against him is laid bare as he and others in his administration are now asking you to undertake the very same practice." He sent this letter after the Federal Housing Finance Agency referred Letitia James for potential criminal prosecution over alleged mortgage fraud, something James strongly denies. Lowell is asking the DOJ for a quick response to his letter requesting they reject the criminal referral against James alleging mortgage fraud.
Letitia James's lawyer doesn't even understand the property that he's defending. Abbe Lowell might be busted for representing Big Tish, saying he submitted inaccurate, maybe even fraudulent statements to Pam Bondi at the DOJ's office. Wow. Now, in the wake of those accusations, she's hired Abbe Lowell. This is Hunter Biden's former lawyer. This dude has been around for a long time, representing a lot of Democrats, and he is responding to the criminal referral that was sent in against Tish. So this letter is from his office on behalf of Tish, as Tish scrambles to explain away her fraud. She accused Trump of fraud. There was no fraud at all. She manufactured it, and as usual with these folks, it is confession through projection. So everything that she is accusing Trump of doing, she's done. And as a reminder, this was the letter that got sent over. So this one was the criminal referral from Federal Housing, FHFA, saying, hey, guess what? Pam, Todd, she's a criminal. You should investigate her. Based on media reports, she falsified her resident status in Virginia. She also got a lower mortgage rate. Then she misrepresented property description requirements so she could get government-backed loans at lower rates. Those are the two claims. We got the one out of Virginia. Remember, the evidence was pretty clear, saying, in fact, a building permit that was issued to her in 2024 lists her property as the James residence and says remains occupied. The primary residence gets more favorable loan terms, but she's not living there. Is her primary residence where she says it is? Lenders view secondary mortgage rates as riskier, so you get better rates. That was in Norfolk, Virginia. Then she's got this other one where the property and the certificate of occupancy says 5 units. She purchased it as a 5-family dwelling, but then she got a loan for a 4-unit building because you get a better loan that way. She got the HAMP loan. Remember? Conforming loans have favorable rates and terms, but they cap out at 4 dwellings per property. So she got a much lower rate on that. It's actually a 5-unit building. That's fraud. So she's got 2 instances of fraud. One where she's saying, oh yeah, I'm going to live there. Give me a primary rate for my primary residence. Fraud. Then another one, oh no, it's 4 buildings. It's a 4-family unit over there. It's 5. She's getting fraudulent loans because she's a criminal. So the analysis, right, the referral is pretty brief. You see it came over from William Pulte. We read through this in much more detail previously. They say, hey, you should charge her with wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, false statements, and other relevant state laws. And I've attached this as well, showing in 1983 that James and her father, her daddy James, Daddy Tish, stated they were husband and wife in order to secure a home mortgage. Then James was listed again as husband and wife in Exhibit G. Well, this was a long time ago. It raises concerns, okay, about the validity of her representations on mortgage applications. And so many other people have committed fraud and been prosecuted for that, including Mosby and another dude who pled guilty to this. So look into Tish. So then Tish hired Abbe Lowell, Hunter's lawyer. Now, Hunter has no money. He's not selling any paintings anymore. So Abbe Lowell was looking for some work. And so here's the response back to Pam from Tish. They says, all right, hey, I represent Big Tish out of New York, and I've reviewed the letter that Pulte sent over. And I'm going to address the latest acts of, here it is, political retribution. Got it. This time directed directed at James, publicly instigated and endorsed by Trump. The stunning hypocrisy of this is the politicization and weaponization laid bare. The so-called criminal referral lacks any credible foundation. Having one of Trump's aides shout to a reporter that she's guilty is no substitute for the facts. All right, so this is going to be pretty boring. So it's going to be political retribution is his argument. So Abbe Lowell is going to tell Pam Bondi Trump is engaged in political retribution. Is this a joke? Trump was the victim of political retribution for 4 years. You think that's going to be persuasive to Pam Bondi? All right. So how do I get a fair trial with Peekaboo James, said Trump. Good question. So Trump made all these statements, right? A bond of this size by the corrupt, racist Letitia James in this witch hunt is unconstitutional. It was. It's true. These are all true statements, Abby. Thank you for refreshing our memory on these. Calling for Attorney General James to be placed under citizen's arrest. Yeah, she should, even more now, for committing multiple felonies and interstate fraud. As president, Trump directed the revocation of security clearances, which is true. It should happen from James. It's already happened. The U.S. Federal Housing Director Pulte is the latest to carry this out. So then he's referencing Pam Bondi's statements back during her confirmation hearings. He says, you know, Pam, you said during your confirmation hearings that you're going to be independent and you must act independently and you're not going to let politics come in here and you're not going to let your DOJ be weaponized. Hilarious. In fact, one of the first executive orders from Trump was ending the weaponization of government. And now you're attacking us? So baseless allegations. He says it's a 24-year-old document. You say it has 5 buildings, but it's old. These documents are old. So let me explain it to you. He says, in 2023, James assisted her niece, Shamise, who needed financial support with a down payment on the home. The mortgage application required only one individual to live at the property. Pulte cherry-picked an August power of attorney that was mistakenly stated that the property was to be James's principal residence and absolutely ignored her very clear all-cap statements 2 weeks earlier to the mortgage loan broker. This will not be my primary residence. It will be Shamise's, right? So they're getting more to fill it in. The broker understood this, and James was not a Virginia resident and replied, your declaration will be marked as the non-occupying co-owner. So just kind of introducing some other evidence, right? This was more documents. Then after the erroneous, so it's just a mistake, power of attorney was filled out in the loan application, she filled out another questionnaire that said no. And so there are other documents showing that that one document was mistaken and she's been accurate in other items. So I hope this will put this to rest. The documents are old and it was basically a mistake. That was corrected or properly noted in other documents. Now in 2001 then, she purchased another home to facilitate supporting her sick mama. The co-occupancy dwelling has 4 floors, and as long as Miss James has lived there, the property's always functioned as a 4-person residence. So functionally, it's 4. Sounds like fraud. Initially, Miss James's mother lived on the 1st floor, then James occupied the 2nd floor, a close family friend occupied the 3rd floor, and her brother occupied the 4th floor. The basement did not have any unit. After Miss James's mother died, and to this day, James has occupied the 1st and 2nd floor herself, with the close family friend and brother occupying the top 2 floors. So they all live in the building. It's a family building. Now, Director Pulte points to a 24-year-old, again, the documents are old, certificate of occupancy listing the property as having 5 units, but it's functioned as a 4-unit for the past 24 years since Tish bought it. In fact, in a document he's seen, home affordable modification confirms it being 4 units, but he ignores that. Other documents say it's 4 units, like the finance records and more. And so other documents say it is 4 units, and simply put, he's cherry-picking documents. Okay, that's rich. Coming from Tish, who cherry-picked a bunch of documents that weren't even nearly as fraudulent as anything that's being alleged here in the Trump case, as we talked about. So here's the Queen's property. They say, okay, in 1983, did she marry her father? It says James's father sought to buy a home for his family in Jamaica. He asked his daughter, a few years out of school, to help by allowing him to add her name. She filled out the mortgage material, wherein they described their relationship as being spouses, and purchased the home without her. But this is a baseless allegation, ignoring other supporting documents, saying it was daughter. So they just put him in there like in the spouse section, but then noted that it was daughter elsewhere. So that's a pretty short explanation there. Now, as I've set forward elsewhere, this letter is notable for the fact he omitted other records. If you look at the relevant file, you'll see that the errors were corrected, criminal referrals based on stale reports. Letitia James's lawyer doesn't even understand the property that he's defending. So in response to what Abbe Lowell just said, Sam Antar, the dude who's really been breaking all of this, he says Abby's pretty stupid. He fundamentally misunderstood the property at the center of the investigation. The letter, which was prompted by the criminal referral, falsely claimed that James's Brooklyn property has always functioned as a 4-person residence, but literal official records, utility infrastructure, tenant complaints paint a very different picture, and it's legally significant. In his letter, Abbe made the following claims about the Lafayette property, which is the 405 building property, saying the description reveals a lawyer completely unfamiliar familiar with all of it. The building's legal classification, the physical layout of the property, the actual utility services that are present, the documented complaint history, and most strikingly, the certificate of occupancy shows no fourth floor exists, but the lawyer claims the brother lives there. That alone should disqualify the letter, right? And here's what you see here based on the building records. This is interesting. So this dude is just detailed as hell. So he made a whole chart on this. Says, okay, the lawyer Abbe says the cellar doesn't even mention it. The lawyer appears to conflate the basement and the cellar, like at the bottom, like CELLAR, not a cellar of a building. Official records show that it's not a legal residential space, okay, in the cellar. He said the basement did not have any unit, but the certificate of occupancy says, well, one legal unit exists. You can live there. Con Edison, a separate meter is labeled basement, right? So like there's utilities set up. Somebody could live there and set up utilities. HPD records, the tenant complaints from unit 1, someone complained down there. Somebody was living there. First floor, they say, lawyer says, James's mother lived on the first floor, and James has occupied the first floor unit until mom died. But they say, no, it's actually one legal unit. The tenant complaints have come from this unit, contradicting the exclusive family occupancy. So someone else was living there, and it's got a separate meter. Second floor, they say James lived there, later expanded to the first and second floors. They also call that second floor another legal unit. There were complaints from unit 2B. So who is 2B? And those are non-family tenants. So Tish didn't have her family living there. She was renting that place out, making some side cash. There were complaints from unit 2B. So like on the second floor, there's two people living there. And there was a separate meter. Another certificate of occupancy shows that there are two separate legal units on the third floor, right? So there's like two buildings. There are two separate meters, 3 FRT and 3 RR, two separate buildings, right? So you got two tenants paying separate utility bills. So a close family friend occupied the third floor. No, they didn't. You had two renters in there, liar. Her brother occupied the fourth floor. It doesn't exist. The building only has 3 floors plus the basement. Then there's a 4-person residence. Wrong. Certificate of occupancy says 5 family dwelling. And there are 6 electrical meters there, 5 for units and 1 for a common area. She's a liar, working from the wrong floor plan as well. Now, the basement is actually the cellar, first floor, and it's all just messed up. Now, this misalignment is critical because tenant complaints from unit 1 and unit 2B correspond to the spaces that the lawyer claims were exclusively occupied by James. James is complaining against herself? She probably would do that. She's that dumb. Not by unrelated tenants. Oh, when we correctly align the floors, we see these complaints directly contradict Abbe Lowell's lies. This isn't just an embarrassing error in a routine real estate transaction, but in a letter to the U.S. Attorney General defending New York's chief legal officer. The attorney isn't just mistaken, he's making up a building that doesn't even exist. What? The certificate of occupancy describes what the building actually is. In fact, the city of New York issued that in January 2001, just 2 weeks before James purchased it. Under New York City Code, no building may be legally occupied in a manner inconsistent with this document. It has to reflect the actual status of the building. That's why you can't just start changing buildings around, because you got a permit for it so it can update things. Here is the certificate of occupancy. It's got a cellar, a basement, a first floor, a second floor, a third floor. It's not a suggestion or a guideline, Abby, Tish. It's controlling legal documentation that establishes how the property may be lawfully used. The certificate of occupancy explicitly classifies the building as a 5-family dwelling with specific details showing 2 separate units on the third floor, no 4th floor at all. Abby. Now, there are also Con Edison records. The physical reality the lawyer missed as well. Con Edison meters, so utilities, show there's a basement meter, first floor, second floor, third floor right, front unit. Oh, there it is. Third floor, rear unit, and front unit, and third floor, rear unit. There's also a common area for the hallways and the shared areas. Wow. These meters provide undeniable evidence that there is a separate metered unit in the basement, which, according to Abby, says didn't have a unit. There are 2 separate units on the third floor, which the lawyer claims is occupied by a close family friend, which might be Fannie Willis. The Con Edison designations align with the certificate of occupancy and the classifications. Now, each meter represents a separate account with billing information. So for the lawyer's 4-person residence claim to be accurate, we would have to believe that multiple electric meters exist for no reason at all. Somebody just wants to pay 2 separate utility bills on 1 floor. Got it. So there are also tenant complaints. Housing preservation and development records show tenant complaints from units 1 and 2B directly contradict Abby's timeline. Oh, Tish busted again. This is more fraud. Abby's facilitating it now. Says here, look, we got a complaint. Complaint condition, the wall is peeling. The entire apartment, somebody calls, New York, whatever. Here's the number, complaint 2025. Ooh, that's recent. Status is open. The entire, wow. And the living room, peeling off the walls. Tish. Manage your property, Tish. Disgusting. These complaints complaints create an impossible scenario. There are Unit 1 complaints. According to the lawyer, Unit 1 was initially occupied by James's mama, who's now dead, rest in peace, and then later by James herself. But the records show that the tenant is complaining about the unit. So either Unit 1 was rented to the tenants, which James's lawyer said that didn't happen, or James is filing complaints against herself, which I said she might do. I don't know, because she's like, I can't believe this condition. This is disgusting in here. We're like, that's your life. That's who you are. She's like, it stinks in here. We're like, put your shoes back on, Tish. Highly improbable. I don't know. It is Tish. She is a moron. So there's also Unit 2B complaints. The lawyer, Abbe, also claims that James has always occupied the second floor, either alone or as part of her expanded living space. However, the existence of, quote, Unit 2B suggests that they subdivided the second floor. Tenant complaints from Unit 2B prove someone other than James occupied this space, which directly contradicts Abbe's fake letter. So, and there's also a timeline inconsistency here too. If we assume James's mother passed away years ago, the lawyers claim that James has occupied the first and second units, then cannot be reconciled with complaints from those units. So she's so dumb she moved into the next floor. She's like, this floor is disgusting too. Who do I talk to about this? Maybe she should sue them. She should sue them for fraud, actually, and serve herself with a lawsuit. The lawyer specifically says, after James's mama died, and to this day, Miss James has occupied the first and second floor of the units herself, but the tenant and their complaints prove that that's not true. So the contradiction is particularly significant because it reveals not just confusion about the floor number, but the actual occupancy history of the building. If tenants were filing complaints about the units the lawyer claims were occupied by James, his entire characterization of the property is fundamentally flawed. Official records show there's no fourth floor. There are two separate units there. There are complaints from Unit 2B. Someone else is complaining about the paint peeling off the walls. And you can see the whole litany here of records. And here's more. Everything collapses. Abbe Lowell's a moron. Lawyer says no basement exists, but it does. There's in fact a basement meter. After Mama's death, James has occupied both the first and second floors according to Abbe, but there's a Unit 2B there, so it's not exclusively hers. And the third floor is a single unit occupied by a close family friend, but there's two electrical units there as well. James's brother occupies the fourth floor, but there is no fourth floor in the building. The property also has function as a 4-person residence, but it's legally a 5-family dwelling. All physical evidence contradicts the claim. So she is a fraudster. Serious legal implications for her, Abbe. You should be advised. 5-unit buildings are classified as commercial properties. That's why she's doing all this fraud. She doesn't want it to be a commercial property. Federal lending guidelines explain it. C2 classifications for 5+ units versus C3 for 3 to 4 units. Stricter underwriting standards, higher down payments, less favorable terms for Tish. Also, the HAMP program, Home Affordable Mod program, James used in 2011, explicitly excluded properties with more than 4 units. Fraud. Building code compliance. She's not operating in accordance with the building code. She subdivided it more. Unauthorized subdivision. If those complaints from Unit 2B indicate subdivision, maybe she's Airbnb-ing this stuff. Somebody should look it up on Airbnb. Go stay at Tish's residence. Be disgusting. Come out stinking like hell. Noxious odors coming out of everywhere. Not reflected in the CO. This would constitute another building code violation. Now, the bottom line, this is more than just embarrassing for you, Abbe. You should be embarrassed, Abbe Lowell, but even worse. For attorneys representing New York's chief law enforcement officer to be so fundamentally confused about the property at the center of the case raises profound questions beyond just mere incompetence into potential legal exposure. Whoa! Abbe Lowell might be busted for representing Big Tish, saying he submitted inaccurate, maybe even fraudulent statements to Pam Bondi at the DOJ's office. Wow. Abbe Lowell might have submitted potentially inaccurate statements to a federal official, raising concerns under false statements, which addresses statements made in a federal jurisdiction. Such situations require careful review of the facts and circumstances, but maybe Abbe Lowell could be busted for saying all this fraudulent stuff, didn't even look at the records. For James, if she reviewed this letter and she knew that was a fraudulent statement, maybe she should sign off on submitting fraudulent records. And for the property, the physical evidence of the tenant complaints, utility meters, and more, a lot of that may not have operated as described by Abbe Lowell, raising concerns about whether the property has been maintained in compliance with building codes and more. And so either the lawyer, two things could have happened here to come to this botched conclusion, failed to perform even the most basic due diligence about the property, which would be an extraordinary lapse for an attorney representing the Attorney General of New York, or the lawyer knew these facts and chose to misrepresent him anyway. And Abbe Lowell's gotten in trouble before for some other filings in Hunter's cases and other cases because the dude is just so aggressive. He just says whatever he wants and hopes no one cares, raising even more serious questions about the integrity of James's legal defense. There's no integrity in anything she does. but neither scenario inspires any confidence. When your lawyer doesn't even understand the building he's defending down to the basic facts like how many floors there are, it suggests a defense built on fiction rather than fact. Now, most critically, the tenant complaints from the units were occupied by James herself offer irrefutable evidence this entire narrative is factually impossible. No amount of legal maneuvering can reconcile the documented tenant visits with the lawyer's claim that her family was the sole occupant. Is this the best that Big Tish can produce? It begs the question, how deep does the cover-up go? More records are coming. Stay tuned. Written by Sam Antar at whitecollarfraud.com. Big trouble for Tish.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.